It's relative to Moss Park. What will you do to ensure the provision of care services in Lochaber matches the need for it, especially to ensure that people throughout Lochaber can stay as near as their families as possible? And I'm going to put that one to Rebecca.
Okay, so I think it's really important to view care of the elderly uh, from a range of perspectives. That the care is not just about the care home, but care at home and how we help families to stay together in the locality. So it's about all sorts of different care and health provision. The primary health care of your GP, but also things like district nurses, home care, home help, that make that possible. From my own experience with caring for my mother-in-law, dementia can become a 24/7 experience for everybody, and you need respite as well. And I think if you build that into the process, you enable families to stay together. It was never the case that we didn't want to look after Jill at home, but we did actually need sometimes to have a break, because it can be very weary. So daycare centres as well are really, really crucial. It's crucial for the elderly person to have that social interaction, and I think that's a crucial part as well of the whole package. Making sure that there is enough provision in all of those different services so that families can stay close and together, but it also has that knock-on benefit of reducing delayed discharge. If you have those services in place, then folk don't have to stay in the Belford for as long as they are currently. I think today I met somebody whose mother had been in the Belford for almost a year. And that's obviously no good for folk at all, or for the families. It's incredibly stressful. If those services are occupational health and adaptations that you can make to your own house and your home, that should also be available. So another family who I spoke to in Kinloch-Leven had really struggled with the adaptations they needed to put in place in their house, for their loved one to come home. So it's a very complex myriad of different services that need to be in place, and we need to make sure that they're all in place to all communities and all families, so that we're not just talking about Moss Park, we're also talking about families in Kilhone and families in Acharacal, that they're able to stay together and they have services. We're not spending masses of time commuting, but we're actually spending time with people. The interaction is crucial. I've got 1 second left, so I'm just going to stop there.
Sorry about that. Andrew.
First of all, can I clarify my point earlier on? Because I think Rebecca understood the point that I was making. I wasn't suggesting that we just needed care homes. I was concerned that senior council officers' attitude was the council should just concentrate on care at home, because actually we need a mixed approach to this, which is what Rebecca has suggested. And we need to be planning for the future, because we know, particularly here in the Highlands, our population is aging more rapidly than other parts of the country, and we will have a much older population with more complex health needs in the future. And providing care homes like Moss Park for those that are on their own. I've seen countless elderly people when I was serving at the counter in Kinloch-Leven Post Office that I saw week after week after week, that I thought, I'm seeing the onset of early stage dementia or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, and was able to get the local GP's surgery to provide assistance and then long-term care in places like Moss Park. So we do definitely need a system like that. But I would also like to have a look at community-led care, providing care at home. Loch Ness have a really interesting model of community care around the around Loch Ness, and is that something that could be adapted here in Lochaber that would mean that places like West Arden and Merkin could benefit from that care at home, whereas it might not be possible at the moment. And taking up Rebecca's point about adaptations, the council can be woefully slow at dealing with in-home adaptations, which would mean that individuals can stay at home with support or with an element of independent living for much, much longer. And then they can take ridiculous decisions. I'm dealing with a case at the moment where an elderly lady desperately needs a walk-in shower, and whereas the council says, we won't replace your bathroom with a walk-in shower because when you accepted our housing offer 3 years ago, you accepted on the basis of the bathroom that you have. And that's just ludicrous that the council can't recognise that people's needs change quite rapidly in a later life. And whilst they might have been fit and able to use a bath 3 years ago, in a very short time, that can change. So we need to change that sort of attitude as well.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew. We'll go to Susan now.
I don't really have a great deal to add. I think both those contributions were great. And I agree that it needs to be a multifaceted approach. But I think one of the most important issues is that we need to be able to keep it as local as possible. We had to close the Macintosh in Malik about a year ago, and there was a couple of people were put up to the Inverness, one was put down to Ballachulish. And, that's an enormously long return trip from Malik. So it just meant the daughter wasn't able to go and see her mother as often. When it's local, you can pop in every day, and it's that daily contact makes a huge difference with dementia and some of these long-term illnesses. And that is going to be expensive in a place like ours, but the value both for the resident and for the families is enormous, and I think we need to find a way to make it happen.
Thank you, Susan. Nathan.
Yeah, so it's been some very good points made by all. Speaking as someone who has family members who are home carers themselves, and do that job, obviously, as we said earlier, there's horrendous strain being put on these people. They are working horrendous hours and are being given impossible tasks. And, you hear very regularly about, like Andrew was saying, there can be some rather unusual decisions, shall we say, from, things, for example, lifts and hoists being placed into houses and things like that. It can be a very Monty Python-esque kind of system sometimes. So I think that sort of thing needs to be looked into. There maybe needs to be some simplification in the different departments. I remember one story someone told me where it's one department would drop off the wheelchair, another one has to come and get it, things like that. It's a very convoluted system, and I think that needs to be addressed. Simplification to make it so that people are being dealt with quicker, and these modifications being made so that people can be in their own homes, because as folk mentioned, things, for dementia, familiarity is a critical part of it. People can deteriorate very rapidly if pulled from from familiar surroundings. It can cause a lot of upset and distress. So it's a very difficult question, and I think it's one that's doesn't really have a particular answer that's going to suit every single situation. Obviously, the problem we have up here, as people have said, is we have an aging population. We are, we are losing younger folk. There's less opportunities up here. People are leaving. And we ended up with more and more people who are obviously, a lot of folk retire up here as well, of course. And so that is going to be an issue we have to consider, is the fact that, as there's going to be a smaller and smaller pool of working age people, then there's going to be a smaller pool to pull from for healthcare. And so that has to be addressed and considered as well, I think. I think there needs to be community led. I think that's a phenomenal thing. I think that again, people taking an active interest in their own community and people that are in the villages around them and the towns. Well, I think that's fantastic. I think that should be encouraged 100%. Community led, care and projects is always a good thing. And I think maybe we need to look more into alternative ways in terms of private healthcare is private homes aren't necessarily always a bad thing, and sometimes they can even be more efficient and more effective than our own NHS run homes. Obviously that varies from case to case and would have to be looked into, of course, but yeah.
Great, thanks.